By the end of this video, you'll understand why Artemis II is far more dangerous and far more unsettling than it first appears. We remember the moon as a place humans once reached, as if that old victory made it familiar, but familiarity was always an illusion. What remained there were not cities, not outposts, not signs of belonging, only footprints, tools, and silence after the people were gone. Now 4 astronauts are preparing to go back, not to land, not to stay, but to test whether humans can endure that distance again. The rocket looks triumphant from Earth, but its scale hides a darker truth. An enormous machine is required just to send a few fragile bodies outward. And the world waiting for them is not alive, not welcoming, not even hostile in a human way, only cold, airless, and completely indifferent. From orbit, the moon does not look like a destination at all. It looks like a place where life was never meant to remain. That is what makes this mission feel strange, because behind the language of progress is something much more fragile, a temporary return. Most people imagine humanity as a spacefaring species already spread beyond Earth, but nearly all human life in space still clings to home. The International Space Station may orbit above the planet, yet it remains inside Earth's protective neighborhood, close enough to support, rescue, and constant contact. There, every astronaut is surrounded by systems, teams, and voices on the ground. A reminder that even our boldest missions depend on Earth every second. From orbit, our planet still fills the view. Bright, alive, and familiar, never allowing astronauts to forget how near they still are to everything human. Life in low Earth orbit can feel routine now, almost ordinary. And that illusion matters, because Artemis II will leave that ordinary safety behind. This is where the mission changes character, because the path to the moon is not a higher orbit, but a departure from the environment humans know. Orion will move out into cislunar space as a tiny vessel carrying human life away from the only place built to sustain it. And once that happens, the scale of the mission stops feeling heroic and starts feeling thin, narrow, and frighteningly dependent on precision. Every strap, glove, seal, and breathing system exists for one reason. The people inside are not built for what surrounds them. The farther Earth recedes, the harder it becomes to ignore the real theme of Artemis II. Not expansion, but the fragility of presence. Officially, this is a lunar flyby mission, a trip around the moon and back, with no landing and no permanent foothold. That detail matters more than it seems, because Artemis II is not claiming the moon. It is merely proving that humans can approach it again. Orion itself reflects that truth. It is not a deep space colony, but a compact survival shell, designed to keep a few people alive for a limited time. Every panel, every heat shield layer, every tested component reveals how much effort it takes to preserve life where life does not belong. Inside the spacecraft, there will be no room for grandeur, only restraint, discipline, and the constant awareness of how little separates survival from vacuum. Even the largest rocket in NASA's current fleet serves a humbling purpose here. Not conquest, but a careful attempt to leave and return alive. The machinery around Artemis II feels massive, but the mission itself is surprisingly small, almost cautious, as if humanity is stepping back into forgotten darkness. And in the end, the entire symbolic weight of this return depends on just 4 people sealed inside a single spacecraft. When the moon fills the frame, that imbalance becomes obvious. Human intention looks tiny against a world untouched by intention. That may be the most honest image of Artemis II, a small human vessel approaching a place that never needed us and never changed without us. The moon still holds the objects we left behind during Apollo, and that is part of what makes it so eerie. A footprint on the lunar surface feels powerful at first, until you realize it is also evidence that the person who made it had to leave. The hardware abandoned there was not the beginning of civilization, but the residue of a brief encounter that ended almost immediately. High-resolution images of the moon only intensify this feeling, because the more detail we see, the less human it appears. Even the Apollo landing sites, when viewed from orbit, look impossibly small, tiny interruptions in a landscape that erased our importance the moment we departed. The horizon is sharp, the sky is black, and nothing in that view suggests that human beings were ever meant to call it home. Through a visor, the moon becomes even stranger, reduced to harsh light, total shadow, and a silence that no camera can fully capture. Its dust is not romantic or symbolic. It is abrasive, ancient, and perfectly suited to a world that does not care whether we can survive on it. The farther side, and the rougher terrain make the same point again and again. This is not a human environment waiting to be occupied. Even still images from Apollo can feel disturbing because they show a place where people were present only long enough to leave traces. Those traces remain visible from above, but they do not feel like proof of ownership, only proof that absence came after presence. And when Earth rises above the lunar horizon, the contrast becomes almost unbearable. All of life appears distant, small, and temporary. This is why the word rehearsal fits Artemis II so well, because the mission is built around practicing survival, not celebrating arrival. Recovery drills, emergency procedures, and ocean training all point to the same reality. Getting back is as important as getting there. Engineers do not prepare Orion like a symbol. They prepare it like a life support envelope that cannot afford to fail. Simulations and planning rooms may look sterile, but they reveal the hidden truth of deep space flight, that human presence must be rehearsed in detail. Orion, in processing, looks less like a vehicle of conquest and more like a temporary shelter against an environment fundamentally empty of us. When the crew appears in suits, the image is powerful, but also fragile, because all four are carrying something larger than a mission timeline. Their trajectory around the moon is brief by design, a loop that admits something important. We are not returning to stay, only to prove we still can. That makes every close-up of their faces more significant, because Artemis II is not an abstract step in history. It is four human minds entering deep space. The engines, boosters, and fuel systems create a spectacle on Earth. Yet their real purpose is almost soberingly simple: protect a few lives from distance. And when Orion is shown beside the moon, the image does not suggest dominance. It suggests exposure, scale, and the loneliness of being there at all. From that distance, Earth no longer feels like the background of human existence, but like a rare and receding exception in a lifeless universe. This may be the deepest discomfort inside Artemis II. Space does not become human just because humans pass through it. The moon's surface stretches on, without memory, without witness, and without any sign that our return means something to it. Back near Earth, astronauts can float inside a station full of light, routine, and support. But deep space strips away that illusion of normality. As the trajectory carries Orion outward, the mission begins to resemble not expansion, but a test against disappearance. Inside a small capsule, strapped in and dependent on systems, the crew will embody a difficult truth. Human life in space is always conditional. The old Apollo sites reinforced that truth better than any speech could, because they show exactly what remains after the human moment is over. Rock, dust, hardware, tracks, all of it survives in stillness, while the people themselves belong again to memory and Earth. That is why views of Earth above the moon feel so emotional, not merely beautiful, but unsettling, because they reveal how narrow the zone of life really is. Even before launch, Artemis II carries that tension with it, standing on the pad as both a return and a reminder of how long absence lasted. And the slow passage over the lunar landscape forces the question this mission cannot avoid. If humans return, can they remain, or will this also be temporary? Re-entry matters so much because it is the violent proof that the goal of deep space flight is not just to go outward, but to come back through fire. Parachutes over the ocean may look calm compared to launch, yet they represent the final stage of escaping a region where help is never close. Splashdown restores something the moon never offers: atmosphere, water, motion, and the immediate presence of other human beings. Recovery teams approaching the capsule complete the contrast, because on Earth, life is surrounded by life, not isolated inside a shell. In that moment, the mission's deeper meaning becomes clear. Survival in deep space is impressive precisely because it is never natural. Seen again from orbit, Earth looks less like a planet among many, and more like a brief sanctuary suspended inside overwhelming darkness. The moon, by comparison, remains exactly what it was before Apollo and what it will be after Artemis II: silent, ancient, and untouched by our intentions. The crew we watch today are important not because they end that silence, but because they reveal how difficult it is to interrupt it at all. And when Earth is reduced once more to a distant world in black space, the central message of this mission becomes impossible to ignore. Artemis II is dangerous not only because of launch, radiation, distance, and re-entry, but because it exposes how temporary human presence in space still is. That is why this mission matters so much. Not because space is finally becoming ours, but because Artemis II reminds us it may never be.